Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for the appreciation messages from you all on the National Hill Climb Championship video, and I was glad I could get it out and make it, and it was definitely worth it given the response. And off the back of that, I wanted to jump into a bit of a nerdy video. And a little bit more context, because that video was long enough as it was, but I really wanted to get into the data and a little bit of, I guess, behind the training or behind the race effort, to give you a bit more insight. And I think it's important as well to give you a bit more insight. I will be honest, because when you get to this point, I think power numbers, watts per kilo, I think it's just thrown around with very little context, and I just think it's important in this situation to give more context. More context never hurts, in my opinion. It gives you a better picture. It gives you a better story. And the World Wide Web has unanimously enjoyed this content. However, I do realize that there may be people who think that my power meter is overreading, or it's broken, or I don't know, like things like that. I do read comments, I see things, and I just want to shine a bit of a light on it, really. So let's start off with my weight. So my weight for the Nationals, and I've where have I put it here? National Hill Climb Champs. I have put my weight at 60.3. My FTP is not up to date, so ignore that. But 60.3, I would have said, right? Lots of people think that I was 59 kilos. No, I haven't been under 60 kilos for about 3 years, maybe. And I know I said, I think a couple of weeks before the Nationals, that I was 61 kilos. That would also have been not up to date. I definitely wouldn't have been under 60. I would have been under 61. But because I didn't weigh myself, I was living in a van for 5 days before the Nationals. As you can appreciate, I was probably in like 60.5 range. You get to a point where you know where you are based on how you look, how you feel. So that's the most accurate weight I can give you. Now, power meter talk. I'm running 4i precision power meter. I would say I've been using 4i power meters for 5 years. It's left-sided, and I think the biggest thing with that is the argument that the accuracy, it can be a little bit flawed. Now, I'm not sponsored by 4i. The reason why I've used their power meters for 5 years is the price, the ease of use, and I can transfer them between bikes. And I don't like using pedal power meters, by the way. And because I've used double-sided power meters in the past, and I know that with my efficiency, I've been riding a bike for like almost 15 years. I'm pretty well balanced, as you could probably imagine. So, and plus, I'm a seated climber for a lot of the time. But so I know with a fair deal of confidence that whatever I use on my bike, it only matters to me. So comparing my numbers to somebody else's, or you can only compare my numbers to my numbers in the past, and that's what I'm going to do a little bit here. So sit back, relax, and let's get stuck in. I don't know, there's numbers being thrown about like 7.4 watts per kilo, 7.2 watts per kilo. You can see it right here. This is my effort from the Nationals. And although my average is 7.2, the normalized is like 7.3. Now, the actual effort itself, as you can see, is a little bit, it's not a plain smooth power graph. There's obviously fast bits, slow bits, you name it. But when I think when I mentioned on Strava the 7.4 number, this is what I meant, this first section here. So again, a little bit out of context, but that's what I meant. I meant the first like first 8 minutes, the first bit of the hill, then, if you will. So it's not. I wasn't saying I was doing 7.4 watts per kilo for the whole climb. I was trying. I wasn't specific. So how far back are we gonna go here? Well, let's first of all start with the Welsh Hill Climb Championships from 2019. This is 13th of October 2019. This is the full effort for you to see right here. 418 watts for 12 minutes. As you can tell, there's no real up or down in power. You know, it's basically just a very smooth graph all the way up, even though it's a very fast bit at the top. So I actually paced this wrong. I should have gone a lot harder in the beginning and then like faded at the end, basically. Like finishing strong on such a flat section there is, yeah, it's not ideal. So that effort was around about 6.9, 7 watts per kilo if I was the same weight and that time. And then a couple of weeks later, I did a hill climb which was very much the same distance, and this was 429 average, 7.1, with slightly more variable power, but not as much as the struggle. So this flat section is flat, but you still require a lot of power. But if you look at it, it's 430, 7.1, 8.5 minutes, give or take. Yeah, there's some context going back to the 2019 National Hill Climb Championships when I took the win on Hato. So we'll start there. we'll lay the foundations there. Now this is an effort I did in middle of September this year, so about 6 weeks before the National Hill Climb Championships this year. I did my first test, right, race test on a climb I was going to use to mimic the National Hill Climb Championships this year. And it was important because, well, it's important to recognize that this was done after a big travel day to a race. I did a hill climb, I did a race, and I was probably not in the best mindset or preparation to do this, but I just thought I got to get something on the board so I can work with it. Now, over September, you may remember I did a lot of short hill climbs, short being the word, but like 5-minute hill climbs. I was doing these at a power of around 450, 460 watts. But the short hill climbs are never quite my bag, in a sense that I can't really produce. I can produce that power for 5 minutes, but I can also produce like just 10 watts less, but for 10 minutes, double the time. So my strength is, going longer, and I can't get as much out of myself going shorter. I'm just using that as an example. But the training or the foundation is being put in place there so that I can go longer. So September was all about doing these short hill climbs. And the hill climbs would be the only time I'd go max. Right? So like once a week, I'd go really, really hard, max, during a race. That would be the effort that would push myself, hopefully, and unlock the next bit. So my training sessions in the week were very short intervals, micro bursts, 30-30s, that type of thing. And then there's a change. And that change comes like the last week of September, maybe 4 weeks before the National Hill Climb Championships. And it's like a switch. You flick a switch and you start to really sort of lean in and to really sort of, I'm trying to think of the word, but you commit to it. Like when you'd be surprised. Say if you're always doing 200 watts in your FTP test for 20 minutes, for example. When you say like, no, right, I'm going to commit to 220. I know it's a massive jump, I'm going to commit to it. If you catch yourself on the right day and you commit to that 220, you'd be surprised how long you can hold that for. You might not hold it for 20 minutes, but you might hold it for like 16. And that unlocks that next level for you. It's quite a shrewd way of looking at it, but I've found it does actually, that is a thing. So there's my effort, and I tried to commit to this first 8 minutes. Oh, that's not 8 minutes, but that's 4.5 minutes. This first 8 minutes, but I was really dying of death. I wasn't on a good day 400 watts, 405 watts for 8 minutes. But this is middle of September. Fast forward a week and a half later, I did a Windlatter hill climb where I overcommitted. I overcommitted to doing a really good effort for the majority of this climb, 4 minutes, where I did 440 watts for 4 minutes 20. And then essentially the climb ended there and my power started to drop off. But it doesn't matter. I'd committed so much in that beginning that I ended up being able to win that event, essentially based off that power in the first 4 minutes. So that gave me more confidence then. And in training, I decided, right, let's start to go longer. Let's start to do more sort of 3-minute efforts, 4-minute efforts, lots and lots of repeats, build up that tolerance to being able to hold this power. And then essentially, the races on the weekend started to get longer. So this would have been the first of the longer ones, this being 6.5 minutes, but technically it was only like 4.5 minutes because that last bit was a little bit flat. So they started to get longer. The Welsh Hill Climb Championship was my first real effort that I'd done on a long climb where I would have gone like, right, now we're making good headway now. Like versus the last time we did this effort, which was middle of September, where I was like 405 watts for 8 minutes. I was like, oof, I'm going to have to pull something out of the bag over the next couple of weeks. Things started to turn around. And the Welsh Hill Climb Championship gave me that confidence I needed to then go to the next level again. And there was a lot of other riders who would be favourites at the National Hill Climb Championships that were also doing a long hill climb that weekend, but the other side of the country. And my performance versus those performances, that gave me a lot of confidence as well. So if you look a little bit of detail on this, as you can see, the speed is quite high at the end, so my power drops off. But I committed. I said to myself beforehand, I'm going to commit to this first 8 minutes because the Nationals is going to have a really solid bit of climbing at the beginning of the hill, and then it's going to flatten off. So I'm going to commit. I'm going to go and commit to this. So this effort was 427, very flat pacing, but essentially I was on the limit. But I was on the limit and pushing that envelope. So there's a theme developing here, obviously. So this was 8.5 minutes. So this, again, was big confidence because this length of time is perfect for, the British Hill Climb Champs, or that first section. So that is, which date was this now? This was 3 weeks before. So 3 weeks before, I'm getting close to Nationals 2019 power, which was a little bit more same power, but for longer. 429 for 8.5 minutes, but then I was able to produce something at the end, whereas at the Welsh Hill Climb Champs, I didn't quite have that. You had the fitness, but you didn't have the form just to go that little bit right at the end. So I was very impressed with myself and very pleased with that effort. So the next effort would have been the one that I did in training that was 2 weeks later and was a week before the National Hill Climb Champs. Because what I then ended up doing after the Welsh Hill Climb Championships was I ended up having a weekend where I just did a club hill climb, where I did a 5-minute hill climb. And my power was nothing special. It was like 455 watts again for like 5.5 minutes. But that told me that I was on the right path because my 5-minute power hadn't really increased. But I knew that I could hold that 5-minute power, or not so much a 5-minute power, but slightly less, so 10, 15 watts less. I could hold that for like double the time. So I knew that things were going in the right direction. So this final hit out, which was my practice effort before the Nationals, this was about 9 days before, 9 days before, because I had a wedding on that weekend that I was attending. And this effort was the effort that I knew everything had come together in the preparation. And it almost seemed like every week we were making progress. And, I've said this before, but this is the most successful hill climb season I've had. Regardless of coming second at the Nationals, in terms of preparation, peak, performances and the results, this has been the best hill climb season I've had. Even better than in 2019 when I became hill climb champion. So there is a hell of a lot of positives to take from these, and I hope it's coming across in this video. So this session, well, which effectively I treated as a race. I went into it with race mindset. I did a warm up. I was in race kit, race nutrition, you name it. Everything was the same. And again, in this, I fully committed to doing like the best power I could for this first portion of the climb. As you can see, this one, I'm going to get the nationals up as well. Look how similar these two profiles are for the full climb. It's amazing, actually, that I had this on my doorstep. So I rattled through the first 8.5 minutes, and I was amazed, frankly, at when I committed to doing 440, 450. It was bang in the middle, almost 445 watts for 8.5 minutes. And I hid the power for this ride because I wanted to build a little bit of like excitement and tension. And I knew that if I posted it, then it would become, I don't know, it would become a talking point. And I didn't really want that. I just wanted it to be a little bit quiet. So I also finished that up this final little kick here, which was 503 watts for 1 minute and 17 seconds, which was a big tank emptying effort. And I was really pleased with how I finished this one. We'll compare this effort with my nationals, actually, just for a little bit of comparison for fun. But one final ride I did then up the struggle, which would have been 3 or 4 days before the nationals. I just rode up the struggle, I don't mean that, at 407 watts. But my heart rate was really quite sort of mellow. Only just reaching 170 in that final few minutes. And although I've not raced with heart rate monitors, I obviously train with a heart rate monitor all the time. I knew that this was low, and there was a lot of capacity for me to sort of go way above this. And again, it's all about that commitment, committing to the numbers. I'm sure lots of you can relate to that. But here's my effort from the National Hill Climb Champs. And as we can see now, I pulled out the same performance. Yes, there's a couple of dips here. But I pulled out the same performance in the National Hill Climb that I did in that training ride 9 days before, which is what I was really sort of worried about that I wouldn't be able to do. I was worried that was my one shot. You know, I went that deep in training in that one session to practice for the hill climb that I'd shot my bolt, and I'd be like, I've got nothing left now. Like, because the thing is, like, I did the nationals, a couple of days off, and then went out riding, and I did a couple of efforts, and I'm like a different person. Like, that performance on that day, if you ask me to do it today, now, like a week later, I can't do it. Like, I'm so fresh now, and I'm so, like, you know, I've sort of just, I've switched off that I just can't do it. It's amazing, actually. It's also very weird, but it's the weird and wonders of sport. But it was essentially the same. 446, 444 for 8.5 minutes, or for 8 minutes. And I carried that into that flat section, which is where, obviously, I started to drop off because of the speed increase. And then this final ramp here at the end, I'll just pinch it from there and see what that says. So that's 484 watts for 2.5 minutes. 2 minutes 20. And with a very strong finish. Obviously helped by the crowd, but that's 30 seconds at 442 watts. I mean, alone, right, on its own, this effort here from me is one of the best efforts I've done over that duration. So my best ever 3-minute power is 492 watts. And for 2 minutes and 20 seconds, I've come less than 10 watts away from that, with a 30-second effort at the end there at 550 watts. So I was in the greatest shape of my life. Very similar to this power here in training, but obviously I held it for a minute longer, but slightly less power, but for a minute longer, which kind of makes sense, obviously. I wanted to go into the details. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.